G'day, Professor Joseph Drew here. A lot of people that have trouble getting published in journals don't understand the process. They don't understand what the reviewers are seeing, what the reviewers need, what the editor is seeing, what the editor needs. In this video, I'll draw on my own editorial experience to give you an insight into what's happening on the other side of the fence. And it's bound to make you more successful in the future. So, indeed, I wish I'd known all this 12 years ago when I started as an academic, but them's the breaks. You only get the opportunity to be an editor towards the end of your career, and this is when I really finally found out what the other side was seeing. Prior to that, I was acting blind. I didn't know what they were looking at. I didn't know why they were saying what they were saying and why they were doing what they were doing. So let me tell you about some issues that editors have. One is getting reviewers. So you can see there on the right hand side, left hand side when you're looking at it, a whole long list of reviewers that I invited to review a recent paper for an A ranked journal, for a good journal. And they all declined. I ended up having to draw on one of my friends, a colleague, and pressure them a little bit to put in a review. To get the second review, I needed a minimum of 2 reviews. So one of the problems that editors is having at the moment is getting reviewers, any reviewers. Forget about good reviewers or bad reviewers, we just can't get reviewers. And this has been a particular problem since COVID. Some of you may know that around COVID time there was a purge of a lot of senior academics. Because the students stopped coming, universities wanted to reduce their costs, and they forced a lot of people into retirement. Now, you lost all those people that knew so much. Those senior academics used to do an awful lot of reviewing too. They were top people who wanted to give back to the community, academic community, towards the end of their career, and we really relied on them a lot. And they're gone now. They're retired, and you can't blame them for not wanting to review papers when they're not in the field anymore. So we're having a devil of a job getting reviewers. That's the first thing you need to understand. So if you're submitting a paper and it's taken forever to go out to review, the chances are the editor's invited a dozen people like I did recently and got 1 acceptance and 11 rejections. It's happening. The other problem that we have is getting qualified reviewers. So those old guys that knew a lot, the names we recognise, they're gone. We're basically having to get a lot of young people. Some young people are good. Most overestimate their abilities and overestimate their knowledge. It's like they swallowed some book recently and they're wanting to show everyone how smart they are. And often they don't know anywhere near as much as they do, and they write some silly things. And this is the downside of the environment that we have at present. So the other thing that leads to is a lot of bad reviews and bad reviewers. And if you've been sending journal papers out, you get reviews back, you can see that the quality of reviewers has plummeted. There's not much we can do about this. We can't get good reviewers. They're not there. Journals don't pay for people to review. You're asking people to do things for free, and the good experienced people that had the time to give back aren't there anymore. It's really, really hard. One of the things you may not know is, and it seems a lot of editors don't know, if you get a review that came back that's clearly insane and the person hasn't read it and has no idea what they're talking about, the editor can actually reject that review. And a lot more of that needs to be done. I get reviews back and the person clearly has no idea what the hell they're talking about. Good editors, going back to that old idea, I remember an old editor at PAQ, he was great, Aaron Walkers. A good editor will reject those bad reviews or write back to you in the decision letter and say, well, look, read it by all means, but don't get too caught up on it because this person seems to be a bit off track. We don't have those good experienced editors as much as we used to have, so that's a problem. But we can reject inappropriate and badly thought out reviews, and we should do it a lot more. And I guess if we had more reviewers to draw on, we probably would do it much more. But usually we have to have these 2 reviews to be able to make a decision, so it puts us really in a bind. The other thing that people don't understand is that we can actually, as an editor in the systems, we can rate the reviewers about the timeliness of their reviews and the quality of the reviews. A lot of people don't rate them, and the ratings don't get factored in so much when you have reviewers suggested for you. But the system's set up to do that, and perhaps we need to do that more often. But I think the key problem is we just don't have the reviewers to draw on. We're going to have to give them an incentive, or the university's going to have to reduce workloads so that we can get reviewers. Because whilst we don't have while we're struggling to get reviewers, it makes it difficult to reject bad reviewers, and it makes it difficult or meaningless to review, to appraise, evaluate reviewers, because you don't have much choice anyway. You get whoever you can get. Now imagine how hard, if that's for an A-ranked journal, imagine how hard it is to get decent reviewers for a B-ranked journal. It must be diabolically difficult. Imagine a C rank or an unranked journal. It's a real problem that the scholarly community and the universities need to tackle and do something about, because it really dictates the quality of everything we see in the scholarly literature. So there are actually things you can do. One of the biggest problems is for the journals is finding reviewers. So help them out. Most journals you can suggest reviewers. Don't suggest mates and then ask your mates to do you a favour. That's not the way it should be done. I know it is done like that far too often, but it's not the way it should be done. Suggest people that you know are working in that field, preferably in your country, because they'll understand the context. It's less for them to get on top of, which means they're more inclined to accept the review invitation and to do a speedy review, because they understand things. It's quicker for them to come to a decision. So suggest reviewers. If you're not doing that, you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're doing the editor a disservice. And remember, the editor is the person that makes a decision about your paper. Provide context for international reviewers. This is particularly important if you're not from America or England. It's always interesting. I get comments back from reviewers too Australian, or I don't understand things, or it's clear from the reviewers that they had no idea what the context was or what the paper was all about. Well, sometimes that can be the author's fault. Often it isn't. Often it's laziness and prejudice on behalf of these reviewers, but never mind. But sometimes it's the author's fault, and you haven't written 2 or 3 paragraphs clearly explaining the context, and particularly focusing on the difference between your context and the context in the UK or America, which is where a lot of the reviewers come from. Be kind to your reviewers and your editors as an author. So if you get an opportunity to submit revisions, straight away, right back to the editor and thank them for the opportunity and give them an indication of when you're going to get the revisions in, and stick to what you say. In your revisions, be specific. Write a revision report and say, these are the things that reviewer 1 said I had to fix, and this is how I fixed them. This is what reviewer 2 said I had to fix, and this is how I fixed them. And then in the actual revised document, I find it's actually way better to highlight in yellow your changes. Sometimes you do it in track change and it doesn't pick it up on the PDF, and I've actually had to review revisions where I haven't been able to see what they changed, and that's made it really difficult. So highlight it in yellow. That'll come through on the PDF. It'll make it really easier for the reviewer when it comes back to them to say, oh yeah, I remember that. It says in the revision report I said that I wanted these things fixed. I can see highlighted in yellow. They did fix these things. Happy days. I now recommend accept. And put yourself in the shoes of the editor and the reviewer. Try to think about, what do they actually mean? What knowledge might they be missing? What information might they be missing? What might they not understand about context? And very politely and nicely try to give them what it is that you think they're missing. Every comment has to be addressed. I've got other videos about this. I suggest you look at the video about doing revisions. As a reviewer, when you're asked to do reviews, and you will be once you submit to a journal, that's one way we get your email address, be kind to authors. Treat them the way you would like to be treated. As Hillel said, do not do unto others that which is hateful unto you. If you don't like having to sit around for 3 months for an answer, make sure you do your review really, really quickly. If I accept a review, it gets done that week, within a week. I'm going to do it anyway. Why not just get stuck into it and get it done? Be timely, but also be positive and productive. Okay, sometimes you've got to recommend reject. I had to do it recently. I didn't want to. I don't like to give anyone bad news, but at least I sat down and said, well, this is where the problems are, and this is how I suggest you fix them. And I even gave them some references to get them started on the literature review, which they'd basically missed out on. Try to put yourself in the shoes of authors and think, I need information. If you're going to reject me, why? What can I do better? What can I fix before I send this off to another journal? And try to be nice to these people. We're all in the same game. We're all trying to do our best. Try to help them to be their best. So here's some screenshots of selecting reviewers. So when the paper comes through, I hope you can't read the names, and perhaps you can, and if you can, please don't. These aren't the names of the authors. These are the names of suggested reviewers for a particular paper that came to me recently. And there's a great big list, and there's like 20 pages of them. We try to select people that might have written about similar things. But it's a matching process, presumably by some AI, and the matchups aren't great. I often have to go through several pages before I find one. So this is why, as I said before, suggest reviewers. You make your editor's job a lot easier, and if it's easier for them to find a reviewer, that means you're more likely to get reviewers accept, which means you're more likely to get reviews quick, which means you're more likely to get through the process quicker and hopefully to acceptance. The other part of the screenshot here is how we can, a bigger shot of what I showed you before, how we can rate the reviewers. It doesn't get that done that much, and it's not that much use anymore because it's not like we have many options. It's really, really hard to find reviewers. But I just wanted to give you insight into what editors are looking at. This next slide is very, very important. You get the letter back from the editor about the decision. What you don't get is to see what each reviewer recommended. And this is what they're filling in. They're filling in whether they accept, minor revision, major revision, or reject. Usually most journals, if you get one reject, you're out. Good editors, if the rejection is not reasonable, will rescind that review or ignore that review. But there's less good editors out there these days than what there used to be. So that's something you're not getting to see, what each reviewer said about you. You only see their comment. And sometimes their comments look like it's okay, that they're pretty happy with you, but they might have ticked major revision to me or reject to me. You don't get to see that. It makes it really difficult, doesn't it? I think the authors should get to see this. The next important question a reviewer fills out is, would you be willing to review a revision of this manuscript? And you don't get to see this either. Now, some people, and I probably do it about half the time, say, well, I've reviewed this, there's only little things, I don't want to see it again, and tick no. If that's the case, your revisions will not go back to that person. And that would be key to know, wouldn't it? So you knew how much effort to put into each reviewer's comments. This can become particularly problematic when someone that's put in a harsh review recommending major revisions ticks no, because then it doesn't actually go back to that person. And if everyone's ticked no, it can go back to an entirely new reviewer that can have a new set of problems and may have disagreed with the previous reviewer. I've had that happen to me before. Very, very frustrating. I think this information about what the reviewers suggested and whether the reviewer was willing to see a revision of the manuscript or not, I think that information really should be given to the author. You're not seeing it. I, as an editor, am. There's also opportunity for reviewers to write confidential comments to the editor. I would like to see this box disappear entirely. Reviewers shouldn't be saying anything to an editor that they're not willing to say to the author. And not giving the author all the information, it's defeating the whole point of the process. The whole point of the process is to get the information to the author so they can improve the manuscript, so we can all improve as a scholarly community. So there's a lot of changes that these manuscript one and systems and all the computerized systems we have to use, there's a lot of changes that they really should make to make the process better. And I guess no one ever gives them the feedback, but if they're watching this video, perhaps they'll get it. Look, I bet you learnt a lot that you didn't know, because it took me 10 years until I learnt this stuff. If you like it, make sure you give it the thumbs up. That's how I decide if I'm making another video on the topic or not. If you got a comment, get in contact with me. I reply to just about every comment, I think. It's what keeps me going. I'm only trying to help you guys out. You've got to give me some information. You've got to throw a dog a bone, as we say in Australia, or I won't be able to help you in the future as well as I might wish to. Anyway, hope this helped. If it did, flick it on to someone else, encourage them to subscribe, and you haven't subscribed yourself, get your act together. Good-o, thank you, bye.